Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
The following is independently produced programming. The views and opinions expressed are those of the producers and do not reflect the views and opinions of Falls Area Community Television, our staff, or board of directors.
Secrets in the shadows, lost and found. Truth in every echo, loud and clear. Keep on with the long road, no more fear. In the halls of power, whispers grow. Every secret jacked beneath the undertone. Honest stories hidden in the dust. On this long road, in the truth we trust.
Welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Chris Roberts. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about some forever wars, and we're going to talk about different things that we as American people don't really pay too much attention to. We pay attention to, oh yeah, Department of Defense budget's $900 billion. But wait a minute. They're asking for $200 billion more for overseas contingencies. Well, which means, yes, that 200,000 doesn't, even though it's additional to the budget, doesn't quote unquote go into the official budget. And, you know, government does not operate their checkbook in their budgets like we do. Oh yeah, we got another $200 billion. You would think they would put it in the same bank account or checking account that your regular budget's in. They go, nope, they create a new separate checking account. Okay. When you go in, and so we do this, but people get killed during war. People get killed in the little escapades. People get wounded. Okay? Most people would call that a cost of doing business. But what's happened is we don't want to make the Department of Defense budget look so big, so we'll create this separate VA budget over here. Okay? And because it's over there, it doesn't look big. But about 60% of the VA budget is mandatory funding. Plain and simple. Nothing Congress, the president, or anybody can do it. It's mandatory funding. Well, we're going to go back and look at, we'll go back to 2000. And the paperwork I have goes back to 1995. But it shows the growth and the cost of these wars. And they have a definition of war, different, but Congress and the politicians do. Most people think when people are shooting, one military is shooting at a military, that's a war. And what it says, since 1995, so in the past 30 years, we've had 36 wars that the United States have involved, and 26 were never declared by Congress. So it's like you have to go really far back and really work hard since 1995 to 2025 when the American military hasn't been shooting at somebody or someone hasn't been shooting at the American military. But we as Americans, it's like, it's not our kids. It's no big deal. And plus, look at all the tax breaks. We've had the Bush's tax breaks. We had the Trump's tax breaks. We got the big, beautiful bill coming in. And this is great. Someone else is fighting the wars. Nothing, we don't have to worry about people we know getting killed or injured. And we're getting tax breaks. But we don't even have to worry about the bill. This is really good. Well, as we go on, we may see that maybe it's not that good. Maybe it's because politicians think, hey, as long as we get Facebook, Instagram, or any of those, TikTok, Twitter, we won't pay attention. And you know what? We really haven't been paying attention. The recent war with Iran has really gotten our attention because it's holy crap. Gas is over $4. This is this. And this is going up. I had to go to Manchester this morning. When I left my house at 6 o'clock by Cumberland Farms, gas was $3.71 a gallon. When I got back in Keene about 11:30, gas was $3.89 a gallon. Gas went up 18 cents in less than 6 hours. People notices that. People will complain about that. Hey, if you're putting $30 in your gas tank, 30 gallons, wait a minute, I gotta pay over $5 extra just to fill it up, compared if I had filled it up in the morning than if I filled it up at noontime. Okay, we had the Colin Powell doctrine about wars. One is you don't go to war unless you know you can win it. Well, how do you know you're going to be able to win it? First, you have to have a defined objective. The reason, for example, Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, General Schwarzkopf did not launch the attack until he knew that he had overwhelming force and he was going to win. Bingo, done in 96 hours. That was Colin Powell and General Schwarzkopf. They had been lieutenant colonels in Vietnam, and they knew what happens when politicians get into wars. And second, Colin Powell had this thing. He would tell you, if you go in and you break it, you own it. You just can't go into a country, break it, and say, hey, I'm out of here. Well, after that, we caused a lot of problems. Because if you go to books like The Art of War and things like that, or even Machiavelli and, what is the worst that can happen? And what is the worst that can happen by you initiating a war? And what are you going to do first to prevent it? And if you can't prevent it, how are you going to handle it? Well, American politicians haven't been doing that. No different with the Secretary of War, who would have a hard time winning on Call of Duty, and the president, they never looked at potential consequences. And they're shifting all around. They never had never had an objective. We had an objective in World War II. We did not have an objective in Korean War. So what happened? We've 3 years, 50,000 Americans get killed. And guess what? We're right where we started from the 38 parallel. We went to the Vietnam War. What was the objective? That was more political, bang and forth. We didn't want communists to go down. But what they didn't realize or didn't want to tell us, Ho Chi Minh was not really a communist. But we double-crossed him after the war because we wanted to protect the French. So we now have another 58,000 Americans get killed. We walk away, and Ho Chi Minh has Vietnam all to himself. And right now you can go to a lot of stores and you can find the clothes that you buy right now were made in Vietnam. Other items that you buy were made in Vietnam. The objective going to Afghanistan was to get Saddam bin Laden. We had Saddam bin Laden in 2002. The Marines had him trapped. He couldn't go anywhere. He was stuck in the caves. So, hey, you know what? Let's change this. Let's get the Taliban out or get here. But Afghanistan's all made up of warlords. And everybody wants a payoff. 20 years in Afghanistan, no objective, changing objectives. Oops, no different than Vietnam. 20 years later, the same people that we drove out are now in. And right here goes the most insidious feature of modern American warfare is its self-perpetuating nature. Okay, every war that we have fought has been created by the war before it. Okay, Saddam bin Laden, we go and we're training Saddam bin Laden and all this so they can fight the Russians in Afghanistan. But after the Gulf War, United States pressured Saudi Arabia for bases. Well, this ticked off Saddam bin Laden, a devout Muslim and Saudi Arabian, and he turned against the United States. And so he became radicalized. Then Afghanistan, because Saddam bin Laden, that resulted in 9/11. Afghanistan, we went into Afghanistan destabilizing Pakistan. And so a lot of the groups, the terrorist groups that were in Afghanistan went into Pakistan. So it caused us, the military-wise, to go into Pakistan and other places. In 2003, Rumsfeld was able to convince the president he knew what was going on. And so what they did was, anybody who was in the Ba'ath Party, they automatically were fired. They had no jobs, no nothing. Well, if you go back to World War II, after the end of World War II, not everybody in the Nazi Party was thrown out. Not everybody in the German army was thrown out. Because they needed some institutional knowledge. But in Iraq, Iraq, we go, sorry. So now you got a lot of these people who can't feed their family. They get radicalized and they create ISIS. Bingo. So we now have to spend 8 more years fighting ISIS. But then ISIS moved to Syria, and then we had to go to war in Syria to go down with ISIS. Then we decide, you know what? We don't like Gaddafi. We go stop bombing Libya, and guess what? Okay, they finally get Gaddafi. They kill Gaddafi. He's buried someplace no one knows. But Libya, which was productive, had a lot of female rights, had well-educated, it's been divided. It's got terrorist groups. You got groups there are sending weapons to other ISIS and Al-Qaeda groups in Africa. And Libya, some of the factions of Libya are slave dealers, capturing people, and a lot of black people, and putting them on boats and trying to get them into Spain and Italy and some of the other places. Then in 2015, we go to Yemen because Saudi Arabia doesn't like Yemen, and they've been war back and forth with Yemen for years. So what? We help Saudi Arabia, and then the Hutus, nope, they don't like Americans. And then the Hutus started closing down the Red Sea, which required the Americans to send the naval forces in and stop bombing them. And now we're in Iran, and so what is Hezbollah doing? Hezbollah is doing a hell of a good job tearing up Israel's army in Lebanon. We got Iraq. What is going to happen in Iraq? Because Iraq's not happy. Then they found out the Israelis were building bases in Iraq and not telling them. Yemen, Saudi Arabia went and attacked with Yemen the other day. Saudi Arabia got upset that Iran aircraft landed in Yemen the other day. So it goes round and round and round. It's kind of like Americans are still playing checkers. When it comes to war, you have to play chess. You have to anticipate 2, 3, 4 moves. But United States isn't doing that. The only one that played chess was the big ones. You had Schwarzkopf. You had Al Gray. You had Colin Powell. You had Vietnam War veterans who said chess, three-dimensional chess. They were going, okay, you guys over here tell me how I can win this. You guys over here list potential problems that may pop up. I want you to think out of the box, come up, make believe you're the enemy. No, think like you're the enemy and think about different ways the enemy could react that we would never even think about. So they put this team together. Okay, what do we have now for example, Iraq? And we look at some of these. We've had a number of kiss-butt officers that would sell their soul and moral integrity to get promoted. They want to be promoted. They want that star. They want that eagle. They want that extra star. But they weren't looking at the long-term consequences. Because, hey, I'm here. I got my star. I'm going over here. I don't have to worry about it. You know, the first one, 1995, we were in Bosnia. We sent 30,000 U.S. troops there to humanitarian intervention. We only spent $4 billion. In 1999, we had Kosovo, 78 days of airstrikes. And it bombed Yugoslavia without UN authorization. And 26 years later, there's still 4,000 troops, U.S. troops there. They've been having, U.S. troops been in Kosovo for the last 26 years. 2001, Afghanistan, enduring freedom. They always like to come up with a great operational name, enduring freedom. Well, the Afghanistans didn't have freedom, and they didn't have freedom before we got there. They didn't have much freedom while we were there, and they haven't had much at all since we left. The whole purpose of Afghanistan enduring freedom was to get bin Laden and destroy Al-Qaeda. Okay? 10 years later, we got bin Laden. We have not completely destroyed Al-Qaeda. You got some Al-Qaeda in the Middle East, and you got more Al-Qaeda in Africa. But we spent $2.3 trillion. We left billions of dollars worth of equipment there. And basically, it's the same as it was in 2001. In 2003, Iraqi freedom. Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld said, yes, we got weapons of mass destruction. We got to get weapons of mass destruction out of there, and the thing will be over in a couple of weeks. You know, it won't even take months, because you see what we did back in 91? It'll be just like that. So what happened? 8 years of war, over 200,000 Iraqi deaths, no weapons of mass destruction found. ISIS emerged from the wreckage, and over 6,000 Americans were killed. And Americans spent $2.4 trillion. Okay? We went to Somalia, 2004, to be advisory in counter-terrorist support. We spent over 20 years of drone attacks and special ops. Al-Shabaab is still operational, and America has put over 900 airstrikes. Libya, Odyssey Dawn, they say 2 billion. Obama says, oh, this is going to be done in days, it's not weeks. Months of bombing, Gaddafi killed, Libya became a failed state with open slave markets. That was about 2 billion. 2014, Syria, inherent resolve. There'll be no boots on the ground. 2,000 U.S. troops deployed, bombed multiple sites. Assad survives. Russia and Iran filled the vacuum. They supported Assad until a few years ago. We spent $14 billion. Numerous Americans were killed. And right now, a person that used to be on one of the most wanted terrorist groups is now the leader of Syria. And now all of a sudden, the president is pardoned everything he's done in the past. And it's, oh yeah, come on, we'll work together. In 2014, ISIS campaign, Iraq and Syria, What was promised, we will degrade and ultimately destroy ISIS. Cost over $100 billion. ISIS territorial was defeated. It could not, ISIS was no longer expanding in the Middle East. Well, yes, quote, the ISIS military machine was destroyed, but not the ideology. And so now there's active cells in Africa, in Asia. Countries like the Philippines are still trying to deal with ISIS movements, and we're still doing bombing strikes and special op forces against ISIS in Africa. In 2015, the Yemen-Saudi coalition support. What we promised was limited advisory and logistics. Hey, that's all we're going to do. Well, the United States was logistically was providing a lot of American-made bombs. What happened was, after it was, by the time it kind of got under control, about 377,000 people were dead, unknown number wounded, in one of the worst humanitarian crises on earth. But hey, no Americans were killed. In 2017, Niger, special ops forces deployed to Niger, Africa. What they were told, that these special ops were kind of like the Green Beret in Vietnam. They were going in there to help train and advise these different countries. And at least 4 American soldiers were killed in an ambush. Americans didn't even know they were there. And right now, these special ops forces are in 15 plus other African countries. In 2002, Ukraine with proxy support Ukraine's sovereignty, and as of now, $175 billion plus in aid, the largest proxy war since the Cold War, no exit strategy, escalating risk with Russia. 2024, Red Sea Prosperity Guardian. What they promise, protect shipping from hunters. Ongoing strike against Yemen. $1 billion in missiles fired at one of the poorest countries in the world. It cost over $2 billion. 2026, Iran developing what they promise, prevent nuclear capability. U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear and military facilities, no congressional authorization, escalating risk. So what we're going in, the president fought for like 58 days, and then he stopped and he said the memorandum in agreement, and then, but now he started over again. And as far as he's concerned, the 60-day clock starts all over again. I do not think that's the way the law is supposed to be. So here it is. We're going in and we're going to prevent Iran from getting nuclear capability. But what's happened is it's been costing the average American a lot of money as inflation is being in threes and got up into the fours. And I've seen a lot of numbers, but right now, middle of the road number right now is said that it's cost us $43 billion, and the Department of Defense is running out of money. They've used up over $900 billion, and they're having to cut training, and they have to do a bunch of things, and they're asking Congress for $190 billion more. So the war on terror right now, 7,074 Americans have been killed, soldiers. And American wars are fought quite differently. During the peak of the Iraq War, there were more private military contractors in Iraq than soldiers. 180,000 contractors in Iraq. At the time, the United States had 157,000 soldiers. And a lot of these contractors were former soldiers and were getting paid all kinds of money. And that was Blackwater alone had over 1,000 armed guards. In 2007, Blackwater guards killed 17 Iraqi citizens. 4 were convicted and were quickly pardoned by then President Trump. It's basically about $8.7 billion. That's what we have spent on this. $8.7 billion. Okay. I'm not billion, trillion. Here's Brown University. They've been doing this, keeping track. Post 9/11 from 2001 to 2022. I haven't been getting an upgrade. Department of Defense oversees contingencies, operation funds. Department of Defense was given $2.1 trillion to spend on Iraq and Afghanistan over and above its budget. Here it is. You got this money every year, but we're giving you all this to spend. Homeland Security at the same time was given $1.1 trillion. The veteran care was given $465 billion. Increase to the base money, that annual budget to the Department of Defense was $884 billion. So not only did they add $884 billion to the Department of Defense budget over this time, they also gave Department of Defense $2.1 trillion off budget. And in this same time, we paid a little bit more than $1 trillion on the money, because almost everything that we were spending went right to the national debt. So we were paying interest on it basically from day one. And the State Department got almost $200 billion to work on this thing. You know, before we go to the VA, you know what would, just to put it in comparison, $8 trillion. You know, No one can comprehend what $8 trillion is. Hey, the $8 trillion. With $8 trillion, you could pay off all the student debt and still have $6.3 trillion left over. You could put, for $8 trillion, every American that wanted to go to college could go to a public university free for the next 100 plus years. We could send every American student to public college for free for over 100 years. Or universal pre-K. So every 3 to 5 year old child in the United States could go to pre-K that would cover the course for 400 years. NASA. We could fund NASA for the next 320 years. End world hunger. World hunger costs about $40 billion a year, so we would be able to, with $8 trillion, basically end world hunger for the next 200 plus years. Other thing, $8 trillion, that means every single household in America could get a check from over $60,000. The internet, the interstate highway system, you could go in, tear it up, and rebuild it 13 times. Just think, all those potholes, all that crap on the interstate, it could all be fixed 13 times. At the highest, at its peak, the United States was spending $9 billion a month in Afghanistan. That's higher than the annual EPA budget. In a single week in Iraq in 2008 was $2.7 billion. And just for the fun of it, okay, $8 trillion, you would be able to pay for every single NFL team 47 times over. So that means you could have almost an NFL team in almost every city in the United States and in Europe and some there in Asia. And you go, that's what $8 trillion is. And we're spending more and more. And we're spending every day, I think it was like 26 or $27 million a day in interest that we were paying. And that's not if we added, that's not even including if we added a single penny. But the problem is we don't have the money to pay the interest, so we have to borrow money to pay the interest, which requires us to pay more. In 2000, the VA budget was $47 billion. Last year's VA budget, 2025, was over $400 billion. So if the president gets what he wants with his $1.5 trillion defense budget, and then you put the Department of the VA in there, You're talking the cost of defending the country in war will cost us $2 trillion. $2 trillion. And I put this down into 4 years. So in 2001, there was 24.4 million veterans. At least 24.4 million veterans. And the total budget was $48.8 billion, and mandatory funding was disability, pension, GI Bill, readjustment benefits, and insurance programs was 26.8. So about 55% of the Department of Defense budget was mandatory, which means no different than Social Security. They had to pay it out. The other part, the 22 discretionary, that's healthcare, computer systems, paying employees, all that other kinds of facilities. Well, when we jump to 2026, January of this year, that is 17.1 million veterans. So we have 7.3 million veterans. In 25 years, it's going down 7.3 million veterans. Okay? But when you look at it, in 25 years, when it's gone up to 400 billion, that means it has increased over 8.5 times. Okay? If you put that in percentage, the VA's budget has increased by 850%. It's increased 8.5 times in 25 years. But we have about 28% less veterans. Okay? Right now, last year, $265.5 billion is mandatory. That cannot be cut out of the federal budget. Yes, you've got 134 billion. So the mandatory funding has increased by about 1,000%, almost tenfold. Okay. But how can you not include this cost in the cost of doing wars? A lot of these people are in, and it just keeps increasing. Right now, so when they did the PACT Act, they added benefits to 3.5 million veterans with burn pits and other ones. They added another $56 billion to the mandatory funding. But to put it this, the VA spends on average $22,989 per veteran per year. Just think of that. $22,989 per veteran per year. And that's about what an E2 active duty military individual makes right now. So we're spending basically $23,000 a year. And you go, wow, that's a lot of money. Okay. But say, so we got 17.4 million veterans, but 8.3 million of those veterans do not even use the VA at all. 9.1 million veterans are enrolled in the VA healthcare system, and about half of them do not have any service connection. They're enrolled because they fall below an income level. 6.3 million veterans receive monthly disability compensation. And so when you look at it, so 11.1 million out of the 17.4 do not get anything from the VA. And then, yes, some are registered, but again, another 11 million people don't even use the VA healthcare system. So you've got 11 million veterans who don't get any disability. Then you've got 11 million veterans that don't even use the VA healthcare system. So when you go back and look in 2001, when you're looking at 24 and now you're down at 17, but now really, basically, you're looking at about 6.5 million veterans and some of their widows and stuff. That's all that's involved right here. But one of the other things, the VA uses an old system where they go back and look at World War II and the Korea and Vietnam, and they look at muscular and things. They looked at people working in factories and things like that, a lot of manual labor, and the VA hasn't updated it. And so right now, basically 1 out of every 3.5 veterans, almost 2 out of 7 veterans are rated at 100% disabled and get $3,938 plus money, extra money if they have spouse or children. Okay. What are veterans getting paid for? The number one disability that the veteran gets paid for, tinnitus, people say it different, noises in the ears. Okay? Over 2.5 million veterans get a bunch you just get for tendinitis. Just tendinitis means you get $180 a month, but at 10% you really don't qualify necessarily to get into the VA healthcare. Okay, and these numbers do not add up because people have multiple. Number 2, loss of range of motion on your knee. You can't straighten your knee out all the way, or you can't bend it back. So limitation of flexion, 2.3 million. And for that, if that was the only one, you'd get 180 to 360 a month. Number 3 is sciatic nerve. You get that nerve pain that goes down your leg. Over 2 million veterans get that. Lumbar or cervical sprain, your back up here, your neck hurts in here. You can better bending over, wearing a helmet, wearing a backpack. 1.8 million. Number 5, post-traumatic stress, 1.7. So basically, when you look at this, 2 out of every 7 veterans that are collecting disability are have post-traumatic stress. And when you look at tinnitus, 1 out of every 2.5 get it. Number 6 is hearing loss, 1.7. Most of that is the older veterans, because if you have get a service connected fraud, even if it's 0, and as you get older, you're going to get an increase. It doesn't matter if it comes from environmental factors, old age, or whatever, it already started. Okay, 1.4 limitation motion of arm. You can't move your arm that much. You can get it 10 to 20%. Again, that's 18 to 360 by itself. Scars and burns, 2nd degree, 1.3. I've had people, believe it or not, have come in and filed claims for smallpox vaccinations. And at times I go, hey, you know what? I've got 3 of them. Okay? But yeah, a lot of them are burns, 2nd degree burns and worse. Migraines. 1.3 million get migraines. And number 10 is limitation of motion of ankles, which is 1.25 million people have that. The claims in 2025 were: number 1 was tendinitis, number 2 limitation of flexion in knee, back or cervical sprain was number 3, limitation motion of arm 123, hearing loss 104. You got scars and burns, you got migraines, sciatic nerve, post-traumatic stress, and motion, limitation motion of arm. Okay, now what's happened, it's one of those, we have a lot of veterans that should be applying, but they don't apply because, there's too many bogus people out there and I don't want to be lumped into them. So far this year, I had 2 guys that I helped file claims for in the Battle of Khe Sanh. And I'm going, hey, guys, that's like 60 years ago. Wow. Okay. But I had buddies that were killed there. I just didn't. But right now, one of the reasons why it's going so high is if you go online and you can Google Hey, file a VA claim. What do I have to say to get it? Oh, I need a Nexus letter. You get a list of all these companies that will write you a Nexus letter. You don't even have to see them. You have to go, oh, I was this. They write you a Nexus letter. There is so much fraud going on in the VA disability system because a lot of people know how to play the game. You've got all these lawyers and you got all these firms that say, come on, I know I'm not supposed to get a cut, but hey, one goes, you know what? Hey, we'll do all this for you. You just have to give me your first 3 months payment. And they go on and on. They just find ways to do it. So a lot of people who rate this do not get it. And so with this number going higher and higher, and in the next couple of years could be over $300 billion. They're going in, okay, tendinitis, we want to change tendinitis. Tendinitis will not be a standalone claim disability anymore. You better have an ear issue. You better have serious hearing loss. Tendinitis has to be a secondary condition. You have to have a TBI or you have to have a migraine. Okay, oh, sleep apnea. No 50 anymore. Oh, we give you a CPAC and you're using it and it works out. Good. You might get a 0 or you get a 10. Or the thing is, wait a minute. Hey, you get a bad back. We're paying you for 40% for a bad back. Oh, you get surgery and, oh, it feels really good. We're going to reduce you. We give you medication and you're feeling better and you can do things. We're going to reduce you. Or maybe once you turn 65 and you're getting unemployability, you lose getting paid at the 100% rate and you go down to maybe your 80, 70, or 90%. So these veteran groups are going to have to find a way to clean up their act, or future veterans are going to get really screwed over because the amount of money being paid to the VA for an ever shrinking amount of veterans is going to disappear because we are creating less veterans every year than that are dying. And so we're losing the veterans because the majority of veterans are over 65. We got to get it right.